I guess the other big thing that I remember that was in the news for a while was obviously the elections in 2008 and 2012. I even remember some of the coverage from 2004. But I mean, the thing that I really remember was 2012, and that was when I decided that CNN was a very, very bad news network. Because it was like Obama and Romney were they were arguing, but they were arguing about what we could do as a country and like what we could do as a country. Both of their visions they gave sound evidence for the fact that we could make the country the way that they wanted to make it. But it was really just a question of what country do we want to live under, like the one under Romney's vision or the one under Obama's vision. Neither of them would have been able to do very much of what they talked about, but both of what they would have done, although it would have gotten us to different end results, or towards different end results. For one thing, they went to just 4 years won't let them get very far, and for another thing, both of them, at least they weren't talking about economically unsound things, like things that just won't work.
Probably the Berlin Wall, an event that someone my age would relate to, what that meant and how we got there, more closely than like, say, someone in high school today, like Zach or yourself. Just from having that be a part of life, let's say.
The most drastic event I would say is, for my generation compared to a previous generation, would be that now these days there is so much diversity out there, and not only is there diversity, there are people of your nationality. And the previous generations, when people used to come from different countries such as India, there wasn't diversity, and people also did not find people of their own nationality to socialize with. But now society has changed. There are so many people of our nationalities to hang out with.
I lived in New York, so that's one where I'll always remember when I was. I was about to go to Stanford, and it was interesting because most colleges start like end of August, and Stanford doesn't start till I think we start like the 21st of September. It's a quarter system. So all my friends had basically gone to school. I was just kind of hanging out, and I was at the bank because I had all these illustrious jobs being the fish guy and stuff. So I saved up all this money for college. And I went to the bank to get my money and bring it to school with me, and all the bank tellers, no one was in the bank, and the two tellers were, they were crying, and I was just like, I don't know, I'm a New Yorker, so I was like, what the hell, like, give me some service here, what's going on? I had no idea. I was listening to a CD in my car, like, I just, I didn't hear it, and one of the ladies was like, kind of, gave me that look, like, what are you, like, why are you here, like, how can you be asking for money right now? And I just didn't know what was going on. She's like, oh, like, a plane hit the Trade Center, and in the past, like, small prop planes, like some guys driving, and like one hit the Empire State Building, but it was like, it's such a massive structure, a plane of that size, it's just like bounces off it. This guy who actually played for the Yankees, he had something similar happen. He was trying to learn how to fly, he messed up, got too close to a building, clipped the wing, whatever. So my initial reaction was like, oh, that's terrible, like, I hope the pilot's okay, but it never would have translated that. So anyway, she sort of said it again, we finished our transaction, and I remember I went home, and I had the radio on, and obviously it's all it was talking about, but until I got home, and I put the TV on, and you actually see it.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad was upstairs, and again, this is the internet was certainly around, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. It wasn't like everyone has a smartphone where you can just look at your phone, or you're getting alerts and texts. Like, that really didn't exist yet. People were just getting off of pagers, for goodness sake. And even like phones with text, it was always expensive, so no one really did it. So he was upstairs on his computer, doing some work, whatever. And I remember I was like, Dad, like, you got to get down here. Like, I was like, Dad, playing at the train. And he's like, all right, I'll come down in a second. I was like, no, you need to get down here now. Like, this shit's happening now. And I think, like, just to actually, I remember sitting there, you see the second plane hit, and so it's not an accident. It's not like, oh, this commuter plane had like some, bird sucked into the jet. But I remember you could tell the first building was starting to get weak, and I just remember sitting there just like praying, like, don't fall. Like, even if they hit it and it burns and it's destroyed, like, there's just symbolically, if it was still there, versus, so to see it actually come down, it was just like, I had been on top of that building many times. Like, that summer I was up there, we went with my girlfriend at the time, we had dinner, it was awesome. And so to see the first one go down, and then the second one, it was just like, it blew my mind.
My father, his parents were much older. He had 8 siblings, and when he was born, his parents were very old. His mother was 45 and his father was 60, and they grew up not in New York City. It was very, very country. So his actual, and also my mother's, because she lived in upstate and sort of the same, but same kind of environment. It's a little more suburban. They had a negative view, kind of the civil rights movement. Having said that, I pretty much didn't. I think I remember understanding why there would be a civil rights movement from a very young age, realizing the inequalities.
Right.
And it might have just been the school that they had sent me to. We read books about, because I went to a Catholic private school, about inequalities. So even though their views were not like that because of, I'm not sure why, and that they were very Catholic, I think at least this school I went to had views of that there should be equality, and that's the way that they a lot of the social studies and English literature that we were taught, sort of.
Apollo 11.
Do you remember it? Or
What year was that? That was 69?
something like 68, 69.
Yeah, so I would have been 3 or 4.
Yeah, you don't remember it?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I didn't have a huge reaction to it, other than I was too young to really
All right.
think that much of it.
All right. Like, do you remember seeing it on TV or anything?
I might have. Where I grew up at that time was a Air Force base.
Oh.
So there was a lot of, or a city around an Air Force base. So there was an awful lot of Air Force activity one way or the other. So it wouldn't have seemed out of the ordinary, really.
Okay.
Other than the moon was involved. But yeah, so I was in college at that time. And I think it happened, I happened to be at home in the apartment at the time. And I saw it. It was mostly just incredulous. Like, it was hard to believe that that was actually happening.
Right.
And then it took a little while to sink in. But it was mostly just really surprised.
That was one that I think I was a little bit younger for. I couldn't actually tell you where I was specifically. I think it was, do you know the year of it? It was like 88 or something like that?
Something like that.
Okay, so I was still pretty young at that point. So I remember it came on the news. Like, we were watching something else as a family or something, and all of a sudden, like, the coverage came on. And like, I think when you're that age, it doesn't really make sense, I guess. Like, you don't understand it. It's especially when, today's day and age, it's even more so. But you see some stuff on TV, and it's I think when you're a kid, it's hard to disassociate what's reality and what's just another show. So I remember being like, it certainly seemed sad. My mom was upset and all that, but it didn't make sense to me. I had no concept of what had happened or like what the significance was. So that was probably one I was a little early for.
The Cuban Missile Crisis was the height of the Cold War between the USSR and the United States.
Yeah.
And as a kid, a 6-year-old, it was pretty terrifying. Every day, or almost every day, or at least once a week, they would test the air raid sirens. And the sound would make your blood run cold. It was scary. Okay? It still tingles the skin. We had drills where we walked home from the elementary school on the chance that after they dropped a nuclear bomb on us, there was going to be something to walk home from school too. So, yeah, it affected me quite a bit because it made it hard to think about the future, so you learn to do things then. And that did affect me because I made decisions that were always based on the now.
Right.
For many years, it was hard to think about a long-term issue or putting yourself out for years because of growing up with the idea that in the blink of an eye you could be gone and everything around you.
is the story of our history. Whether it's the pursuit of prosperity for our people, or the struggle for equality for all our citizens, our commitment to stand up for our values abroad, and our sacrifices to make the world a safer place. Let us remember that we can do these things not just because of wealth or power, but because of who we are. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
I thought that, so, I always think, like capital punishment, is it right, is it wrong? But I think that there's certain instances that it has to be the right thing. And when a person just is beyond what is normal for society, I guess maybe there's no other answer. I don't know.
This day, when a searing tragedy struck in a place parents felt their children were safe. The worst grade school shooting in U.S. history, at least 27 dead, 20 children, 7 adults, including the principal. And the gunman killed himself.
I mean, I felt really sad for all the kids. I don't know, the bigger thing I just thought about is what happened to the shooter to make him shoot so many people. Because I know that it wasn't just people just don't wake up one day and decide, I'm gonna go shoot and kill a bunch of kids. It was it seemed to me like there was something deeper going on than just some crazy person decided to shoot people. And when on the data, when they did research on it, they found it was more than just this bad thing happened. It was it had to do with he had mental health problems, and it was that combined with how our society deals with people with mental health problems.
Right.
Because a lot of it was the mom, when they figured out the kid had autism or it was something like that he had, she didn't really, they just didn't know very much about what they should do to keep him occupied or happy or keep him connected to society. And then that festered over time and caused him to shoot all these people and himself and his mom.
Right.
So I guess it just the big thing I guess that made me see with society, although I was probably thinking about this a little bit beforehand, is how our society right now is very compartmentalized in that it's very hard just if you're sitting on a tram at the airport to talk to the people around you about stuff. And a lot of it's very instead of being very community based in other countries, a lot of it's very individual. And I feel like that gets to some people.
Yeah. I think there's a discontent of sorts that starts with, I think some people are going to be prone to act out or sort of looking for a cause. I think these days it's easier to find a cause, and like everything else, there's plenty of information out there about how to do a lot of positive things, and there's plenty of information about how to take the next step if you want to act out against something. So I think it's just those types of things are just like everything else. It's easier to follow through on an impulse than it used to be in the past.
The odds that you're gonna have, or sorry, say the odds of a random person deciding to do something like that's 1 in a million. When you only have 100 million people, it's all right, a couple people to worry about. But now you've got 7 billion. I think you just have way more odds of these people falling through the cracks, and what seems like a normal set of brothers going about their lives, all of a sudden one of them, it's a series of events, right? Something happens that draws him to be interested in this, and before you know it, I think something like that, it was almost more about some kind of sick thrill for him like even if he has someone in his ear online, whatever, teaching him how to make bombs and like saying how, like, you know, kill people, whatever, I think for them it didn't seem, if you're so isolated of an event and so like one-off, it just seemed like there were these two people who were just disillusioned or something and just thought like, hey, like I'm gonna like just to be like a menace or something. There's no like greater plot to that, you know, in my mind at least. Something like 9/11, I think, you know, the reality, it's just, you take the dynamics of, you know, people in their day-to-day lives and you blow it up to the you know, magnitude of countries and beliefs and stuff like that, and that's when it just gets real heavy. And I think for them, their motivation was basically, you know, they either, depending on who you ask, they're either, you know, jealous of our lifestyle, or they, you know, despise it on the other hand, or they don't, you know, they don't see it as correct, whatever, however they might perceive it, you know, in their mind, it's like we're the enemy for whatever reason.
So I think that terrorism, or those extreme views, especially in the Muslim community, I mean, it's historical. I mean, it started a long time ago with, you know, with what's the word I'm looking for? With Britain and the way decisions that were made a long time ago.
Right.
So, but it is what it is, and so there was a group, especially the Muslims, who have had a high incidence of unemployment and lack of education in that whole thing, and part of it being political, part of it being geographical, and so a lot of times when people are despaired, when there's no education, they're going to resort to a person or an organization that preaches whatever, sort of like Hitler. Yeah, in between World War II. You know, there's desperation, there's no money, you know, you're hungry, so people are going to flock to some psychopath who promises you whatever. And, you know, if you're educated, you might think beyond it, but if you're not going to. So I think that's the basis of how the whole thing, you know, how it's bred, or whatever the roots of the problem.
Terrorism comes from a lack of education and from a polarized belief that you are better than the person who's different from you. I wish religions could be what they're supposed to be, which is a thing to help improve humans. Religion should be that, should be to improve the human. To me, improving the human means being tolerant, compassionate, and educated. Being educated and religious and scientific is not exclusively nice. The science is, if you think about how this planet evolved, I can sit here probably for the next hour and maybe